All right, hi all. For those who just joined us, we're going to give it about a minute to see if a few more people roll in. So we'll start around a little after 12:01. Thank you again for joining. I see a few more joining from the waiting room. All right, thank you all for joining. We will get started. Just so you all know, this meeting is being recorded, so you will receive the recording link after the webinar. And thank you all for joining us this Thursday at noon. Today's webinar will be from Arlington's initiative to rethink energy at Arlington County, and the topic will be car-free then EV Arlington's transportation. We hope that you all learned something today about our sustainable options around the county. So just to kick things off, I wanted to share a little bit more about AIRE and our emission reduction goals for the 2050 year. So we'll start with that we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions from the county and government operations. We are encouraging, assisting, and recognizing businesses that join the county in reducing emissions from their activities and informing and encouraging residents, just like through this webinar, to reduce their own emissions and engaging other localities and regional organizations in our broader effort to execute our community energy plan through carbon roadmap strategies, which will achieve a mid and long-term targets for emission and energy reductions in the county as a whole. Our 2050 goals are driven by our program, our whole of government action strategies, interfacing with our climate policy office, and then continuing the evolution of community-facing programs that we aim to drive behavior change and market transformation. I hope that you, after this webinar, continue to connect with us. We have another upcoming webinar on our Green Building Incentive Program update, which will be held this coming Monday, October 7th at 7 p.m. After the hour-long presentation, we will have a 30-minute Q&A session where you will be able to ask your questions on our recently updated Redline document. I also encourage you to subscribe to the AIRE newsletter so you'll be able to hear about other upcoming events and regular updates about energy saving tips. So today I'm joined by 4 other speakers, and they're all excellent in their own fields. Today we'll be kicking it off with Sarah Crawford, who is the Assistant Director of Transportation at Arlington County, and she will be speaking with us on Arlington's multimodal transportation options. So I'm very excited to introduce Sarah. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jenna. If we could go to the next slide, I'll kick off the presentation to talk a little bit about county goals related to transportation. I'm really excited to be part of this platform today, talking or focusing within the AIRE program about transportation and how we can all make different choices and how we get around and how the county supports those different choices so that we can promote more sustainable transportation options and sustainable modes of transportation. So in the Division of Transportation, which is in the Department of Environmental Services, we're guided through policy by our Master Transportation Plan. This is an element of the county's comprehensive plan, much like the Community Energy Plan is. And I am super excited to share with you all that we are in the process of kicking off a comprehensive update to the Master Transportation Plan. It's called Arlington's Transportation Future. I'm going to put a link to that effort in the chat that you can check out at your leisure. We will be kicking it off in October, and of course, this is October. We have two open houses mid-month and the end of the month. So I would encourage you to bring your voices and your passion and your priorities to this effort. We're looking to understand how people are moving around Arlington and how our transportation network in the future can best serve our community. Our network has always been focused about providing people options, and I'll get a little bit more to that, but I wanted to also share the different pillars that we build our transportation network on. We look at how do we connect people to that green space, that biophilia element? How can we be more sustainable? How can we ensure that everyone has equitable access to the transportation network? And one of our biggest priorities as of late is continuing to ensure that our network is as safe as possible. We can design our network to be safe and hope that the behaviors of the traveling public also are safe as well. So shifting to the next slide. I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of the nuts and bolts of our transportation system. Yes, we have over 1,000 miles of lane miles of roads in our county, but on those roads, we also operate the ART system, which is Arlington Transit. That's our bus system. And we have WMATA Bus that also serves Arlington along with Metro Rail, Metro Bus and Metro Rail. We have a number of different bridges that we maintain in our network, and we also own and operate the Capital Bike Share system within Arlington in coordination with other member jurisdictions of the Capital Bike Share network. We provide our stations, bicycles, and we also permit the micromobility system, which I'll talk a little bit about later. We have a lot going on in the right of way, a lot of which is regulated through state and federal guidance, but a lot of which we have the opportunity to tailor based on the needs of our community and our traveling public, which is increasingly commuting and getting around non-commute trips by biking, walking, and other more sustainable modes. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we have invested in infrastructure over the years. If you've followed Arlington or lived in Arlington for several decades, you know that we've intentionally located our more dense development around our metro stations to provide easy opportunities for people to choose to commute and to travel within Arlington by alternative modes. We're making improvements throughout the county, slowly but surely, as you can see on the left of your screen on Columbia Pike, to provide better, safer access for people to connect to different types of modes of transportation and make those connections from rail to bus to scooter to walk to bike. And we have a long way to go, but we're continuing to chip away at those improvements in our right of way. Next slide, please. I wanted to highlight one of the programs within the Division of Transportation that provides education and information about how to commute and travel differently in Arlington. I hope that you recognize one or more of these different logos on your screen. The Arlington County Commuter Services, through Arlington Transportation Partners, works directly with businesses and multifamily residential to provide travel options that those businesses and property managers can share with their clients or their residents to provide different travel options. We work on transportation travel incentives to provide smart trip cards and to ensure that our new developments have those amenities that make walking or biking to work a better choice for people. And so through Arlington County Commuter Services over the past 20 to 25 years, we've really helped shift that commute trend. It's focused on commuter, but it really does bleed into more different travel options beyond the commute trip as well. So moving to the next slide, I wanted to share a little bit more about the impact that we've had over the years. This is a snapshot of a year of impact from ACCS. The program collectively has shifted for over 40,000 commuters to non-SOV travel. Some people have teleworked more, and that's particularly prevalent after the pandemic. And some people have choose to travel via new modes, whether that's through benefits provided through their employer using SmartTrip and bus and rail, or whether that's simply biking on some of the infrastructure that we're adding every year to the county's network. This also allows or facilitates reduction of emissions. You all know, I'm sure, the transportation network is one of the generators of emissions within Arlington County. And by focusing education and outreach and mode shift, we're able to reduce those emissions. It's not simply, okay, drive less, it's drive less and potentially shift most or all of your trips to a different mode. There's a societal cost savings here. We began focusing mostly on congestion reduction, but congestion reduction and air pollution go hand in hand, or reduction in air pollution. So it's really a good news story that we're thrilled to continue our focus of making sure that we get the word out and provide these educational opportunities for travelers within Arlington. Next slide, please. I just wanted to highlight very quickly a couple of our modes of transportation that we provide. We work closely with Metro to facilitate Metro bus service in coordination with our Arlington Transit, our ART service. And all of this is really designed in layers. We have the Metro rail system, which of course is not going anywhere. It's fixed underground in Arlington in most locations. And we serve those connections between Metro Rail and Metro Bus and ART. And then that feeds to our neighborhoods where we have other opportunities such as Capital Bike Share and micromobility. It's designed to work comprehensively as a network so that people have the ability to make those trips via different modes in the same way and hopefully same convenience that they would have if they chose to drive. We've also recently provided free rides to students, and we've worked with Metro Bus to also provide those free rides, which allows students more flexibility to be able to get around. Next slide, please. I'll quickly touch on the impact that we've had through Capital Bike Share, particularly related to equity. I won't go into a lot of this data. I haven't gotten yet the semi-annual update, so this is from April. But it really shows that the ridership on Capital Bike Share is growing, and that's a fantastic thing. And in large part, our focus in Arlington is trying to get more equity members to sign on. And we provide this equity membership for people for Capital Bike Share who meet certain federal criteria, which allows them to ride, I think for $5 for a membership, ride for free within the normal parameters of the program. That membership has soared, and the trips taking from those memberships has soared as well. We invest a lot in Capital Bike Share, both in terms of operations and maintenance, as well as system expansion and replacement. Next slide, please. This talks a little bit more about our strategy over the past 10 to 15 years for Capital Bike Share station installations. We began focusing along the metro corridors relating to what I mentioned earlier. If you take Metro, you can hop on a Capital Bike Share bike and get to that destination that might not be right at the Metro station. We're now looking at creating sort of a layered network of Capital Bike Share as well, and making sure that if you wanted to take a full trip on Capital Bike Share and not get on another mode, you have a network that's there for you to make those connections that you need to. We also recently added e-bikes to circulation for Capital Bike Share, and we are purchasing more e-bikes. So they're incredibly popular, and we want to make sure that our network responds to what people expect and makes it as easy for them as possible to choose an alternative, more sustainable mode of transportation. Next slide, please. And finally, I wanted to share a little bit about shared mobility devices, aka scooters, which people love or they hate. But regardless, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, scooter or trips on our shared mobility devices that we permit, we don't operate, have soared again in Arlington. And this is another sustainable way that people can choose to move about the county. There have been hiccups since the devices first arrived in Arlington and our permit program began. We've tried to address some of those issues of scooters just randomly all over the place by developing a corral system where we encourage through the vendors that people can park and or find devices at these locations to make it a bit more predictable for users of the shared mobility devices, but also a bit more contained within the right of way so that we make sure that our paths are clear for pedestrians to be able to use the sidewalks without encountering a scooter that blocks their way. We have a system where we ask for people to report misparked or missed or abandoned devices that also tries to address that problem as well. And so that's just a really quick snapshot of all of the transportation options that we have in Arlington. I didn't show pictures of sidewalks. We try to ensure that we have sidewalks for that connectivity, particularly in those areas that are more dense with commercial or residential uses. But I always like to say everyone starts as a walker or as someone who uses the pedestrian system, whether you're able to walk or not. So we need to make sure that infrastructure is there for when people move or step out of their door. So with that, I think that concludes my presentation. It's my contact information if anyone would like to talk offline.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I think that you shared a lot of great information for people to see, as well as that last map, which was, or that last graph, so people can see that through the summer months, especially, it really does peak. And, there are the highs and lows, but you can see how much it has spiked over the past few years. So thank you again, Sarah. For anyone who'd like to contact Sarah, again, this is recorded and I will be passing out the presentation afterward. And thank you again. So we will be moving on to Alan Harned, who's the executive director over at Virginia Clean Cities, and he will be speaking with us on an overview of EVs, and that will cover the future market, about EV usage, and his own experience. So I'll hand it right over, Alan.
Well, Jenna, thank you very much, and I'm grateful to be here in this world with everybody. The Virginia Clean Cities program is associated with the U.S. Department of Energy Clean Cities and Communities program. Bikes and buses and mobility changes are extremely important to us, and so I'm very grateful to talk about not an alternative to biking. Biking and walking will be the transportation priorities, and the progress that's being made is excellent. But I want to dip in a little bit about alternatives to gasoline. So if you need a different or larger mobility device, electric vehicles are here. And so next slide. I'm here as an EV owner. I own that blue car on the right, a Chevrolet Bolt, which is a long-range electric vehicle, but it is also often utilized in municipalities. And this is an example of it charging at a solar electric vehicle charger at James Madison University. Electric vehicles are great. I gave up gasoline in 2013 and support a whole range of different transportation options. But I'm going to talk about electric vehicles at the space before getting back into a gasoline vehicle for any of that travel. Next slide. Electric vehicles have been around for quite some time, introduced in the United States in about 1996 with the hybrid vehicles. Since about 2010, plug-in hybrid vehicles and all electric vehicles have been in pretty heavy effect in the US and in the Virginia marketplace. Plug-in hybrid vehicles, the term hybrid is referring to that vehicle has a backup gasoline motor. And so for some of the longer trips and rural communities, people pick up vehicles like that. But all electric vehicles lack that gasoline backup. They're powered entirely by an electric motor, charging up a battery. Next slide. And it is simply that the battery stores a bunch of traction energy to power the motor. These batteries are big, maybe up to 60,000 watts, 60 kilowatts, or 100 kilowatts. And so they are recharged over a pretty large electrical system, either just a regular outlet or a dryer plug style 240 volt outlet. And out in public, there's also these larger 3-phase power 100 amp DC fast chargers. They'll be able to rapidly fill the vehicle in fractions of an hour. They do produce zero tailpipe emissions, providing air quality improvements for the community, but air quality may be produced in that electricity generation. So it's also important to consider that the emissions can be closer to zero with the cleaner energy sources. And electric vehicles have a driving range often to over 400 miles. And there are smaller electric vehicles that have local in-town 100-mile ranges, like the Nissan Leaf, for example. Next slide. A fantastic resource to consider the emissions impact or the cost savings impact is fueleconomy.gov. This is a public EPA and Department of Energy partnership that has information on every vehicle sold legally in the United States for gasoline and electric vehicles. And so here's just an example of a gasoline F-150. Might not be best for Arlington, but a gasoline F-150 compared to an electric F-150, you would save every 5 years, you would save about $9,000 difference in fuel price, for example, which is why a lot of people are exploring this technology because of that savings. And then with 0 grams of CO2 per mile capable from these vehicle tailpipes, there's some real environmental benefit opportunities. So I just want to emphasize fueleconomy.gov for people considering efficient vehicle purchases. And there's also information about tax credits for these vehicles on that page. It'll also let you get really into the details of your data if you would like to enter your own driving style or review your own vehicle. Next slide. We're in Virginia, so I just wanted to mention that our electricity mix is constantly getting greener as we approach environmental goals, and electric vehicles are powered off of these local energy sources. If you're tied to the grid, it is still cleaner than oil. And the chart on the right is sort of indicating kind of how much tailpipe emissions you can expect from an all-electric vehicle if using Virginia's electricity generation. Next slide. The exciting thing is that there are more than 4,500 public chargers throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, also throughout the rest of our community. So Maryland, Pennsylvania, up and down the East Coast, there are chargers now everywhere. 4,500 outlets. Most people charge their cars at home or at work. So there's 2 opportunities to engage in that dialogue with your workplace, but also a little bit of planning for your home or multifamily. But only 60% of Virginians have access to power, have access to outlets within 20 feet of where they park. Many multifamily facilities are going to need some additional just patience or electrical installs just to get that electricity access to where people park. It's only 60 currently have access to electricity easy to where they park, and then most of the charging occurs at home. But then this is a map of all the chargers in Virginia, and if we can go next slide. And just to note that there's a lot of progress in Arlington for electric vehicle infrastructure and for the vehicles. So on the left is sort of just a note that there is a wide amount of electric vehicle adoption of more than 5,000 vehicles on the road that are registered with the Virginia DMV. And then we also have a lot of EV chargers on some specific corridors and communities. So these are the public charging ports. The blue dots are the DC fast chargers, the highway kind of chargers, and the green dots are the level 2 chargers. And you can see with the size of that there's a lot of level 2. Some of those areas have a lot of level 2 chargers. All this information is public. You can find there are many different ways to find public charging maps. Next slide. Just a note that there's going to be more chargers coming. So these are the current corridors that are designated for chargers to be at least every 50 miles, but there's going to be many more chargers along these highways. So these are the main travel corridors. And you can see in light green where Virginia will be investing later to expand access to those chargers in some grant cycles from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Next slide. And there's going to be more chargers over time. So right now we have we are in the market stage where people can charge and enjoy it. And then over time through 2045, we're going to be building a lot more chargers in Virginia, workplace chargers, public level 2 chargers. And then in gray, those are going to be the number of additional DC fast chargers that are also installed. So This is the need over time compared to what we have now. Next slide. And the funding is going to come from the U.S. Department of Transportation. $5 billion is being invested, including $100 million into Virginia that's going out right now for those DC fast chargers. There's also another $2.5 billion in community grants. And Washington, D.C. just won one of these grants a few weeks back. So charging and fueling infrastructure is coming. There's also a tax credit of $1,000 from the IRS for individuals for a home charger, and a 30% tax credit from the IRS for businesses. Next slide. Market's going to keep growing. This is just a chart that even over time, there will still be internal combustion vehicles. There is a high scenario and a low scenario. The high scenario is the mitigate global climate change scenario. So there is some goals underway, which would be the ACC2 compliance. Currently, Virginia has shifted track to be back on that low scenario by mandate, but I think there will also be consumer choice ahead. Considering this fuel is about $1 a gallon equivalent, there'll be a lot of purchase decisions made for this quality of vehicle compared to a gasoline vehicle. But there will still be a gasoline vehicle stock. So even with the purchases, there's a delay in the market as vehicles might live for 10 or 20 years. So just to note that there's going to be plenty of gasoline vehicles around for the folks who prefer that, but there will be a lot of change ahead in these scenarios. So I'll just sort of close, next slide, by just mentioning that there are some resources. The Clean Cities website, there's a federal site that's the Alternative Fuel Data Center. And I really emphasized fueleconomy.gov that has some content. And then finally, next slide, I'm just going to share my contact information and a calendar tool. If it's a business or a government that would like to talk with me, I'd be happy to connect on that calendly.com link. I am just grateful to be in this world with folks and to present and to partner on these activities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. That was really helpful to hear. I really enjoyed your graphs as well. It's great to see that, the industry itself is still growing in Arlington, and it's good to see that the chargers are expanding throughout the county. So we're very excited, and I'm sure those online are excited to see that. So next, I would like to introduce Jillian Burgess, who will be joining us from Safe Streets Are for Everyone, thank you, or Safety. Definitely more on that, which I'm excited to hear. And she will be chatting about e-bikes, which is the fun climate solution. So Jillian, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jenna, and thanks so much to Arlington County and to AIRE for hosting this webinar. It's so excited to get everyone together and to talk about all of the options and all of the things we can do to help the climate. I am from North Carolina. I grew up going to the mountains. It holds such a special place in my heart, and I know there are many other people who are looking at the hurricane devastation in the mountains and thinking, this is only going to get worse. What can I do? How can I help? How can I help make a difference and reduce our contribution to climate change? So next slide. A lot of times you hear about that. It's things that are maybe seem like a chore, but e-bikes, I'm here to tell you, are the fun solution to climate change. And they really can have a huge impact in your life, not only in reducing emissions, but making a lot of things better. So what's an e-bike? An e-bike is just a bike with a small electric motor. Most of these bikes are charged at home. They use a just simple AC plug like everything else in your house that plugs in. And they come in many shapes and sizes. I've put some examples here. You may have seen a lot more bikes on the road, both bikes like you see at the top that are kind of normal bikes, and also giant bikes like you see at the bottom, carrying stuff, carrying people. And you may have thought to yourself, especially around Arlington, wow, those people are super fit. Those people must be really strong. And I'm here to tell you, nope, I'm one of them, and I am neither super fit nor super strong. I have a little motor that helps me get up the hills, carry the weight, and really makes biking about the same level of effort as walking. It's amazing. It's all of the fun of biking without any of the part of it. So next slide. What can e-bikes do? These are just my own pictures of all of the glorious things you can do, especially with the larger e-bikes. Primarily what e-bikes do is they enable more people to get around with a smaller footprint, both a literally smaller footprint, they're much smaller than a car, and they have a much smaller carbon footprint. They flatten the hills. It's still a little bit of effort to get up hills, but it's nothing like on a regular bike. Again, it's about the level of walking. They improve the weather. Okay, they don't literally improve the weather, but when you're outside walking or biking on a regular bike, one big challenge is the weather. And one challenge is that you're, especially on a bike, you're using a lot of effort. And so in the warm weather, you're making yourself even warmer. In the cold weather or in the wet weather, if you wrap up to against the cold or the wet, you make yourself hot. But then as you expend the energy you need to bike, you make yourself too hot. So what's great about e-bikes is they bring that level of effort down to the level of walking. So if it's hot outside, they also add the wind effect of biking because you're going a little bit faster than walking. So they actually make it feel cooler. And then in the winter, because you're not really generating a lot of extra heat from your body by doing all that work, you can wrap up in the same way that you would wrap up if you were to go for a walk. And you probably have all that stuff. And you can see in this picture in the bottom left, that was a cooler day. That's just my normal, what I would wear to go walk to the grocery store or whatever. You can wear that when you're biking on an e-bike because you don't have that level of effort. And then e-bikes carry lots of things. That's one of the great things about cargo e-bikes. They carry kids, they carry stuff, they carry kids and stuff. And there's even ones that are built to carry friends that will carry a full-grown adult. That picture in the middle is my brother biking with me on the back of my bike, which is super fun. Next slide. Maybe. Okay. Other benefits of e-bikes. So the great thing about e-bikes, in addition to being super fun and being very friendly to the climate, is they have lots of other benefits. Safety. I want to say a really important thing about safety because obviously it's important for you to be safe, but in this changing climate, as lots of people are trying to change their behavior to minimize their impact on the climate, the impact you have on other people's safety really, really matters. The number of people who say they are driving somewhere because they don't feel safe walking or biking or walking and biking to a transit stop is really, really high. In my world, I have 3 kids. I talk to people who have teenagers all the time. And those teenagers could maybe bike to where they need to go, but they don't feel safe enough. And because they don't feel safe enough, not only are the parents driving to the location where their kids are, they're dropping their kids off, the teenagers, and either running more errands or coming home and then going back to pick them up and coming home. It's far more car trips because our transportation network is not safe enough for teenagers to bike. So the safety impact you have on other people is actually a climate issue. And the great thing about e-bikes, they don't have that safety impact on other people. EVs, unfortunately, are even heavier than regular cars. And cars, we all sort of know the safety impacts there. Also, e-bikes, they're great for community building. You're just out there talking. You're out there so you can stop and talk to people. You can be in a group ride with a bunch of people wearing Halloween costumes. You can stop and talk to your neighbors or at least wave and smile at your neighbors. The number of times that I see people out and about who I know, who I can wave and smile at is huge. And sometimes people text me, "Oh, I was driving and I saw you." Well, I didn't see them because they're in a car. And you miss a little bit of that community interaction. Also, the public health benefits, obviously you're getting more activity in your day, which is great for your physical health. There's lots of studies that e-bikes actually lead to more physical activity than regular bikes because people bike more, even though every trip is a little less activity. There are more trips, so it's great. And then the mental health impact is huge. I can tell you, I know how much I've been biking because I can feel myself tensing up when I haven't gotten that activity in my day. I haven't gotten fresh air. I haven't gotten to see people. E-bikes are great because they allow more people to get out, be outside in the world, get activity, get fresh air, and see other people. As Demetria pointed out, e-bikes are also great because they're adaptive e-bikes. I had one of the pictures on the first page was a trike, which has 3 wheels, which helps with stability. So there's many more people who can use these than can use regular old acoustic bikes. And then of course, the financial and fiscal impact. When you compare it to cars, it's much cheaper both for the families. So if you're buying a bike versus buying a car, obviously that's cheaper. You're charging the bike versus filling up your car with gas or charging a car, much cheaper. And the impact on the county, because e-bikes are a lot less heavy, they don't damage the road surface as much. There's other things to it too, but in the end, they don't cost the county the same amount as cars would. So those are great. Next slide. But so cost of e-bikes. So the cost of the owner, an e-bike, it sounds like a very expensive bike, but really when you compare it to a car, it's so cheap. $10,000 is a spectacularly nice e-bike, and it's kind of a crappy used car, right? The charging is easy. It's just a standard plug. Most e-bikes batteries are actually removable and can be taken inside. The storage and parking, anything, you just need a small garage or a shed or even a tarp. Lots of people park their bikes outside, lock them up, throw a tarp over them, and take the batteries inside. Safety gear, helmets and lights are definitely recommended. Lights are required if you're riding at night, but it's pretty easy. You need some weather gear, but again, this is what you would wear when you're walking generally. And you have to think about getting a lock and maybe even getting insurance. The county, there are some costs like shared e-bikes that Sarah was talking about, but they can install the charging capability much more cheaply because it's just a standard AC plug. I'm so excited that our airport, DCA, has installed bike racks that have charging capabilities, and they're all free. You can park in a locker, you can park at a rack and charge, and it's free. It's amazing. And then, as I mentioned, other things are minimal cost to the county. Next slide. And then the sustainability impacts. Let's see. Sorry, I didn't, it's not switching for me. There we go. E-bikes are super efficient. They're efficient both in terms of energy use. When you compare, there's lots of studies out there. I'm not going to bore you with them, but I really like this graphic of showing you how much energy is consumed per kilometer or per mile, and the average speed. If you think about how you get around, e-bikes really fit with the lifestyle in Arlington. And then when you look at space, far more people can be moved in a smaller space than when you compare it to cars. And that saves, and when you think about it on a sustainability level, that space that's not being used can be transformed into something that's more biophilic, that's more permeable, that's better for our environment. And then next slide, I think that's it. Yay. I see some, oh yeah, here's some more research. We don't have to get into that, but they are very sustainable. They are selling faster than EVs. And let me tell you, they are so much fun. And that's the most important thing. So last slide is me. You're welcome to reach out, join our efforts to increase the safety of our transportation system and the sustainability of our transportation system in the county. There are a couple of questions in the chat, which I can just jump into really quickly if that's okay.
Yeah, so I just want to head into Steve's section. Jillian, thank you so much for your presentation. And then at the very end, we'll be holding all Q&A. So we will definitely give you that chance to answer these questions because it looks like there's a few that could turn into a great discussion. So that was excellent presentation. Thank you for, starting the discussion. We're really excited. And I think, a lot of what you said really does lead into Steve's presentation, which will be on county-owned EV charging stations and our upcoming e-bike voucher program. So I will turn it over to Steve Burr, who is the program manager for the AIRE program at Arlington County. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jenna. Yeah, and thanks to the previous presenters. And it's exciting. I think a couple of items that I'm going to talk on about the county-owned EV charging stations and our e-bike voucher pilot program will dovetail nicely with the previous presentation. So excited to dive into that and share some of the implementation work that's happening at the county. So next slide, please. Great. So I'll start with the EV charging program and just provide some high-level overviews of the EV charging stations that the county has installed. And so on this slide, the county has began installing publicly available EV chargers level 2 since 2022. This work has been supported through the county CIP program, focusing on the county locations where there's a lot of origins and destinations and folks travel, community centers, libraries, the courthouse plaza, where a lot of the government activities have. So focusing on those county-owned assets where we can install EV charging for the public and try to provide that amenity and also the visibility of EV chargers throughout the community that folks can use. Also wanted to talk a bit about some of the work that's been happening around the planning aspects and then the associated 5-year action program with the carbon neutral transportation master plan. And so that's really looking at where a variety of topics, but where EV chargers should be located and siting criteria when the county looks to make these investments. Additionally, looking at the private industry and where is that going to install EV chargers, and then additionally a focus on equity, making sure that we're equitably distributing and providing access opportunities to EV charging throughout the entire community in places where EV charging might not be or might slower to be, just supporting those efforts. So moving on to the next slide, and this really follows on with a lot of Alan's comments that he had talking about EV charging. And so one new update that the county just rolled out is we created our own GIS map of all the county-owned stations. And so this link will take you to it. And then here's also a screenshot of the various locations. So, so folks can see where the chargers are located for public use throughout the county. On that website, we also have a link to the U.S. Department of Energy's tool where they have their sort of all the public owned stations, as you can see if those are available to the public, what the costs are, and some of those elements as well. And so we also created that to, recognizing that, that the private sector does have a lot of chargers and folks will be charging there, but also highlighting the efforts that the county has to implement EV chargers on our own sites. Also going down this list, jumping into some of the just some quick facts and figures about our EV public chargers. And so the first one is we have 45 charging ports. We have some where there's a pedestal and then 2 parking spots that are serviced and can charge at the same time. And that should actually be 8 sites throughout the county. And so and those, again, are available on the map for folks to see. And I have a table of those as well. The county also has an EV rate ordinance where we charge 14.5 cents per kilowatt hour for folks to use the chargers, and that's largely to recover the electricity cost that the county pays that's distributed at the EV chargers. And we're also working to update that in the future, given some changing utility cost as well. Another figure that we wanted to display is the utilization rate, or how often are these things getting used. The county is putting forward investments, and so we wanted to see how often folks are plugging in and using these, and they vary by location, but the 6 months rolling average is about 16% of the time over the full 24-hour period. They're plugged in and actively charging at the stations, and so we've been trying to look at benchmarks to see how does that compare to other locations and other the type of level charger, so level 2 or level 3, and also the end use. And so for municipal chargers, that's a little bit better than average. We've seen some benchmarks around like 12 to 15% in some of the studies. And so we're happy that, that the stations are getting utilized by the public. And so that's great to see. And then another comment that that Alan mentioned about some of the federal grant funding, the county is really excited. I partnered with the Regional Council of Governments, or the COG, and was awarded $400,000 to continue the installation work at about 4 additional sites throughout the county. So we're excited to offer that, those additional charging locations, and just add some more opportunities for charging throughout the county, and add some more charging icons to the map. So moving on to the next slide, this is just a real quick overview of where the locations are, just in a tabular format if folks are interested in, and where the locations are throughout the county. So moving on to the next slide. This is diving into a very exciting program, and really dovetails nicely with a lot of the sort of benefits that that Jillian talked about for the e-bike for e-bikes. And so the county is launching an e-bike voucher program. And so another federal grant, the county was awarded a formula grant from the U.S. Department of Energy, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. And so we are planning to partner with the nonprofit and Arlington bike shops, and have 2 tiers of vouchers. One will be an income qualified program, so folks who make less than 80% of the area median income can still have access to the program. And so we're really excited about that, and we'll be working with our internal partners for the Department of Human Services to help that income qualification program. We're planning to launch this program in early 2025, and we'll be the first local government in Virginia to offer this program. So also on this link is we have a feedback form, so where folks can put in their email address, and we'll keep you updated on the program as it gets ready to launch over the next several months. And so moving on to the next slide. And so there's a lot going on in this slide, but I'll sort of stick at the high level in the blue comments just to give folks an understanding of the e-bike voucher program, and sort of the way, and some program contours and the way that it'll work. So like I mentioned, in early 2025, we'll be opening the application window. We're planning to have the application window open for about 2 weeks, and also some really targeted events to help folks register for the events and make sure that we're covering the entirety of the county to have some promotional events for this program. The county will then review applications, looks at terms and conditions and sort of completeness of applications, the income qualification program. And a lot of the other communities we've talked to have implemented this program said there is a big reception for e-bike programs. And so if we're oversubscribed, we'll do a lottery system if we get folks who apply and the budget isn't there to fulfill everyone's request. And so we'll have that built in. Then we'll let the awardees know that they have been awarded this voucher, and then they can work with a bike shop to confirm that they're going to move forward in the process, identify which bike shop they want to look through. This slide with all the different types of e-bikes, really give folks an opportunity to see if does a cargo e-bike that makes sense, does this type make sense, and so they can shop to see what best fits their needs and their use. Then they'll purchase the e-bike, and it'll be a point of sale voucher, and then the county will work with the bike shop and our nonprofit partner to invoice and sort of the administrative function. And then lastly, we're really looking to have a really robust evaluation process, and so we can and so we're looking for applicants to help, our program participants to help evaluate the program, and really, did this change behavior? Is this getting folks to change transportation modes, and trying a few different tactics with a web-based app, and then also a survey, so we can really see the program influence and see how this program and these actions are impacting our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. And so a lot more to come on this program, but we're very excited to be launching this in early 2025, and hope folks sign up for the email list, and so we can keep you updated as this program gets ready to launch. So with that, I believe that was my last slide. So thanks to everybody. And then also just a happy Drive EV week, and and then happy that we're having the discussion about all things electric transportation. So with that, I will turn it back over to Jenna, and I guess we can dive into some questions.
Yes, perfect. All right. So if we could have, all speakers come back on video and Mike, and I just wanted to thank you, Steve. That was a great presentation, and we are very excited about the upcoming launch of our e-bike voucher program. And it was just, great information. We will definitely be following up again with these slides, which will include those clickable links, and you are able to share your interest using that form. So thank you again. All right, so I wanted to just lead over to the chat. I saw that there was a question from Carol, which was, what are and I'm not sure this may be for e-bikes. What are the safety issues for battery charging right now? And so I'm assuming, Jillian, if you could just chat a little bit about that, if you know more in the industry and, what the market is looking like. She said her condo has just prohibited e-bikes and e-scooters due to the fire danger.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for asking that question, Carol. There were some news reports of some fires, particularly in New York City, caused by some e-bike batteries. E-bikes are largely unregulated in the United States, and it's very possible to get an e-bike that costs not a lot of money shipped over from China that doesn't meet the sort of standardization and testing that is possibly appropriate for something that has the power of an e-bike. So I highly recommend buying an e-bike from a physical store, or at least buying an e-bike that is that has a battery that is certified by one of the national or international certification standards, because that's what led to these issues. So there were extensive studies done about the fires that happened in New York, and they found that all of the e-bike batteries that caused fires were ones that were not certified and that didn't have the safety, and I'm not a technical person, but they didn't have the safety measures needed to get the certification, which led to fires. So People for Bikes, which is the trade industry for the bike industry, the trade association for the bike industry, has actually put a lot of time and effort into researching these issues because they don't want to see any more e-bike battery fires. And they actually think that there needs to be a national sort of minimum qualifications for e-bike batteries. So they have, I posted some stuff in the chat with some links to more information that they have put out there. But just a note for your apartment building, because there are apartment buildings that are very concerned about this, pointing out that really it's the certification of the battery that matters, not the fact that it's an e-bike battery. Personally, I have one of those electric generators for emergencies that's bigger than my e-bike battery. So would be a bigger problem if it exploded and started a fire. It's not about being an e-bike battery per se. It's about the fact that it needs to be certified.
Thank you, Jillian. And I know Steve could probably also tie into our e-bike voucher program if you want to give, the background on the research you've done and to make sure that they are going to be safe options.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Jillian really answered a lot of it, about sort of the certification process. And so the terms and conditions, we're going to require the bikes be certified by the, I believe, the Underwriters Laboratory, the UL certification, and then also working with the local bike shops, to know that they are a quality product that have the certification. And so those are the, the safeguards that we are implementing as far as the e-bike voucher program.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And I saw that another question that came in was and I assume this is a follow-up question, how are multifamily buildings handling charging? It looks like perhaps there's that question, and then same person has asked, the county EV chargers at the aquatic center are very slow. Thank you for your feedback. When two vehicles are charging at the rate is dropping to 50%.
Yeah, I could speak a bit about. I think for the first one, particularly the EV chargers and multifamily, that is, that is a whole discussion, whole webinar, on itself with the the opportunities and some of the barriers with charging for multifamily. And so that is something that, with some of the capacity limitations from the distribution grid. And so, so there's a lot to consider during that process. And so, there can be a pretty fulsome discussion on that, and some of the and the county did a bit of a literature review, and then also working with some condo owners to understand what those barriers are and what those potential opportunities could be. And so I think that that's something that's top of mind, and really sort of this collaborative effort where there will be chargers at multifamily where it's where it makes sense, at workplace, at there. And so I think that it's just having the variety of options is sort of one strategy in addition to that for the multifamily piece. And then also thanks for the comment about the aquatics center. And I think that is that was, I believe, the first EV installation that the county did a couple of years ago, and the technology and hardware is getting better by the day. And so understand that, and thanks for elevating that. And recently there were 5 new installations throughout this fiscal year. I believe a couple of those used a different hardware. And I think that they're about 50% more capacity, and so they're a bit faster level, still level 2 chargers, but a bit than what was there. But I think that that's potentially sort of as this technology grows for EV chargers, that that hopefully those charging capabilities will improve. But thanks for the for noting that.
Thank you, Steve. I think going back to the e-bikes, which is our hot topic, is it possible, that Arlington could require that the multifamily buildings, such as these, condos, allow UL certified batteries and e-bikes? I'm assuming, require only the UL certified batteries and e-bikes, and then she lists the certifications.
I will say, as an advocate, I just had written down in my notes to reach out to ACCS, which isn't, they don't require things. They work with employers and apartment buildings and such to improve things. And so I just put down, maybe ACCS could develop an e-bike battery sort of information thing to help those multifamily building owners.
And I'll chime in on the other end of, or back to the electric vehicle end of multifamily installations. Sometimes the costs can get very high if you're trying to install a networked electric vehicle charger in a multifamily facility that's all the way out at the street. And I just do want to remind folks that all these cars, all these vehicles come with a 110 volt adapter in the trunk or in the boot that should be enough for many drivers. So when in doubt, there is still the capacity for multifamily facilities to have some sort of shared community agreements where they could pay or utilize or even tie in level 1 charging. So you don't have to go with a high cost install for all electric vehicle work.
All right, thank you all for your responses. I also just wanted to remind everybody that in the chat, Sarah has offered a link to Arlington's transportation future. So we, highly recommend that you take a look at that resource, as well as Jillian's has put in 2 links that I think will be helpful as well. I will say that we are almost at time, so looks like we have one more question. What is the county doing to encourage retail restaurants to establish and establishments to install bike racks? I know that the county is installing some, but even those are being used by shared mobility vehicles. I may kick that over to Steve, if you can give me a quick 30-second response.
Apologize. I might defer to Sarah. I think she might be closer to that.
Yeah, I was going to jump in, but then I didn't want to jump over Steve.
No, go right ahead. Thank you.
So So we do place bike racks in the right of way in locations where we have seen heavy bike travel. The shared mobility devices are allowed to dock at those bike racks, so there can be conflict there. I think what we're hearing is we need to install more. I think that's something that we would want to regulate in the right of way, and anytime a device is placed in the right of way, whether it's a bike rack, whatnot, we want to make sure that we have eyes on that. However, if this is related to private property, that's something that we would want to talk to our development team about. That's a good piece of feedback.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And I appreciate everyone's
Sarah,
time.
Doesn't
Yes.
Arlington have a tool to request a bike rack or a bike corral?
Yeah, it should be on the report a problem. I know that seems, I guess it's a problem that there's not a bike rack there. So you can report the problem of the lack of the bike rack. But yeah, use the report a problem tool.
Thank you again for the resource. All right, so we are at time. I did see one more question come in. We will follow up with you after the webinar. And I just wanted to leave you with our contact information for the AIRE program, and that is energy@arlingtonva.us. Please feel free to send any more questions to this email, and we will be sure to get back to you with a full response. Thank you again to our speakers for joining us, and thank you all for taking time during your lunch hour or wherever you are joining from to learn more about sustainable transportation options in Arlington. So thank you all, and we hope to see you at the next webinar.